Hey, what is going on? So today we're going to be recording some sort of different type of video, and I'm going to go over the phenomenon known as Dungeons and Dragons Homebrew. Now, this can be a pretty odd case, mainly for the fact that Homebrew never turns up the way that you expect it to be, and Homebrew is mostly regarded as overpowered, underpowered, and that's about it. And that's about it. So, the concept of D&D homebrew stems from the fact that in the Dungeon Master's Guide, it has an entire section, an entire chapter dedicated to giving ideas upon the player of creating their own sort of game by adding in the players making their own races, sub-races, subclasses, background, feats, spells, weapons, magic items. But it doesn't explain how you make a class. Probably for the main fact that this is probably the hardest thing to homebrew. Because instead of a subclass where it is very easy to modify, or it is very easy to avoid things that are terrible about the subclass, or terrible about the background, feat, magic item, weapon, rule, a class, you can just upright avoid it, but if it ends up being bad or too good, then you have no other option than to either ditch it or completely just obliterate all of your DM's dreams. Like with the magic of a certain class named Mystic. Now, you see how easy I swear I cannot go like an hour without my headset breaking. But basically, you see how easy it was to pull up PDF of Mystic, so you can go do it right then. And this has been memed within the Dungeons and Dragons community for years now that this sort of homebrew, but this is official homebrew made by the actual writers and creators of the newest 5th edition of Dungeons and Dragons, Wizards of the Coast, called Unearth Arcana, which has a slight chance of being added into the actual game and being put into a source book and being released, i.e., the most recent release being the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, bringing in new subclasses, other unique quirks and background quirks. But the part that caught my attention in the Tasha's new cauldron was just the simple things, like the tattoos and the sidekicks, which was also pretty cool. So the sidekicks part of the Tasha's Cauldron got me very interested on the. Damn it! I practiced how to say this word before I tried to practice saying this word before I even started recording.
Eidolon.
Eidolon. So the Eidolonist class is pretty neat homebrew that I came across, and I actually really enjoyed it. So much so, in fact, that I wrote it down in a notebook, and I plan to use it in a future Dungeons and Dragons campaign if my friend allows me to, which he highly believes in homebrew as well. In fact, encouraging it, so I don't think that he will have any problem with this. Now, some may argue that homebrew is unnecessary because the game is already large enough, and I have to respect that opinion. But things are always better when you add your own twist to them. When you're making when you're remaking your grandma's sweet pie recipe, it gets boring eating the same thing over and over again. So you're not just going to do that for 8 years. waiting until it's finally fixed by your grandma coming out with a new recipe. What you're going to want to do is that, of course, naturally, you want to change what you don't like about your grandma's pie. Let's say, for example, she makes an apple pie, but her secret ingredient is peaches. So she puts peaches in her apple pie, and for some reason, you do not like peaches. So, Homebrew allows you to change out those peaches with grapes. If you really love grapes, and you think that grapes are magical with every single thing that you cook. So you decide to put grapes in your apple pie, and for to you it tastes amazing, and you love it a lot. And maybe your friends also like grape pie. So what they do is that they say, "Hey, I don't think purple grapes or red grapes are is good with your apple pie. So I think you should try green grapes." So you try green grapes to make everybody happy, and you also like it, and your friends like it as well. That is the magic of Dungeons and Dragons, with its homebrew. So what does this have to do with the Mystic class in Dungeons and Dragons? Um, this has been memed for years for being the most overpowered Unearthed Arcana. So much so, in fact, that Wizards of the Coast completely ditched the class and didn't even try balancing it. They just said, no, fuck this, I'm leaving. I actually do think that the idea of a mystic is pretty cool. I mean, the quirks definitely caught my attention the first time I read this, and I read through this, and this is complicated as hell. It felt like I was reading how to play a monk all over again. When you notice that the PDF has 28 pages of goddamn rules and writing on this class, you already know that it's going to be a pain to drag yourself through. But it's fun, only for the player, not the dungeon master. For the sole purpose is that it is unbalanced. And that's so most people just outright ban the class, make it so you cannot even use it. You don't even have the option to play this class. And then when I participated in the Dungeons & Dragons club in my high school before the coronavirus lockdown occurred, they allowed mystics in their game. And they seemed to enjoy it. Why is that? Because they wrote new rules to change the Mystic class to be balanced. Now, I never actually have played the Mystic. I'm just going to come out and say that I've never actually even played the Mystic class. So I don't actually know how powerful this actually is. But I will just take everyone's word for it and just agree. But I am a little bit on the iffy side. But so clearly, but this also means something else. Is that if they're trying to push out, Wizards of the Coast is trying to push out extra classes, that means that they're trying to open up to try to fix most of the areas of the game where it feels empty. They tried going with another magic caster, but you use your mind power to cast your magic. Is what I get from this. And that is perfectly fine. And the reason why Unearthed Arcana exists is, of course, to make more money. But another thing that they are trying to do is that they're trying to make it so the people that want homebrew in their game, but their dungeon master is too strict and only wants regular rules and doesn't want any homebrew at all. I want the same old recipe. Only the same old recipe with no flavor, no salt, no pepper added to this recipe. Not even a single gram. So, the Dungeon Master's Guide, it vaguely reminds you that there is no reason to add something that already exists, which can be very difficult. Now, we're gonna back away from the Mystic class here. So, the Eidolon class, which has actually been homebrewed and tossed around for actually 4 years, with the original Reddit post being 4 years ago. Go check out this guy, because he was the one who posted this. So, from what I know, this is the newest version. 4 years ago, his account just straight up died, and this is all of his work. Now, it actually is pretty promising and actually sounds really good. I have possibly been playing Dungeons and Dragons for 4 or 6 years. But mostly this has just been one-on-one with my dad or my friend. And only in the past year and a half that I've actually been engaged with more players during a game. So, I still consider myself a semi-novice. Like, I'm like in apprentice levels of acknowledgement of the game. Where I have read almost every single rule and have pretty extensive knowledge of the Forgotten Realms lore and just how to play Dungeons & Dragons itself. Even different editions of Dungeons & Dragons, mostly being 3.5 edition. And 3 edition, basically the same thing. So I consider myself to be a rules lawyer, who is not annoying, where I have a really good memory. So I can remember a lot of things. So I forget half of everything that I even try to remember. You're welcome. So, I'm done with my monologue. We're going to be talking about, briefly, the Prestige class. This has got to be the newest thing by 4 years. Where did this go? So, yeah, this was another class, I think, that was being worked towards. And it was completely thrown out the window. Haven't heard a single thing about it again. It's gone now. Shwink. Okay, now to the Eidolon. We're gonna quit out of this as well. So, this isn't the only, like, post of the Eidolon class that somebody has made. Somebody else has actually made... This is another really popular Eidolon class that somebody made on Imager by some guy named Dice Lord. Now, I could only really find these 2 versions of it, and we're going to be quickly going through them. Now, I personally like this one better over than this one, so we will be mostly talking about this version than the one here. See, this version is a little... Yeah, there's some memes on the bottom there. It's a little bit too gimmicky, in my opinion. And it doesn't really have any solid foundation, and it mostly reminds me of how I used to write Homebrew when I first started getting into D&D about let's just even it out and just say, average it out and say 5 years ago. 5 years ago, little old me tried to write some homebrew monsters, because I wanted to test my dad's ability to outsmart these creatures. Now, they were very poorly written, and it seems like this part is the same way, where it seems like somebody with almost not really any knowledge of Dungeons and Dragons try to write an entire class without any prior knowledge to the way that the game is run and how the game feels. Now you can quickly look over it as well. I'm just going to keep scrolling back and forth, but it's nothing to be excited about. And I think this is 2 years old. It could be longer, but the latest post of this I've seen on Reddit was 2 years ago. So the Eidolist class is still thought of, just not as much as it is today, because mostly new subclasses, new subclasses, and mostly the artificer or artificer class already covers having celestial beings or divine intervention or giant robots that help you in combat. But it isn't really a main class gimmick, which is why this comes into play. So the main gimmick of the Eidolist class, or the Eidolonist, is, I'm just going to call it the Eidolist, is you don't fight. You summon a creature to fight for you. And this lays heavily on the nose that you don't gain any upgrades at all towards your strength or like there's barely anything in here that actually increases your ability to fight or your ability to be a utility. That is the job for your Eidolist, which you control. Now, the gimmick here is that you play as a weakling who can still fight, but really can't stand their own in a combat situation. So you rely on your second part of your soul, which is an Eidolon, which this Eidolon gains all of these class features and buffs your Eidolon to be more utilitively more useful, whatever you want to say, and more combat useful. Now, there's still a few things in here that I would change for myself, but I would highly recommend it for you to check it out. There's the share link. Hopefully, it's the same for you. But just search up the Eidolonist, D&D homebrewery.com, and it'll probably show up. Now, which is why I have these two tabs open, because it's not a completely alien concept, where an Eidolon monsters already exist in Dungeons and Dragons, and they have been around since 3rd edition, as well, mostly just enemy constructs. So this isn't a completely alien idea. So it goes pretty simple that well, basically, you sort of create your own creature out of your soul to protect you like an astral guardian. So, you join the group of the wizard and the artificer class having the least hit die. You barely gain any proficiencies, and Yeah, your saving throws are charisma and wisdom, so you join the good old warlocks and sorcerers, blah, blah. You join every single spellcaster with their saving throws, but you don't spellcast. Which we'll get to that in a little bit. Launch skills, or whatever. Whatever. Okay. Screw all this. The main part is you have sculpted a piece of your own soul and inserted it into the body of a creature you have made, this being called an Eidolon. You can take the form of a biped, a quadruped, or a serpent. The Eidolon can telepathically commune with you, but it cannot speak out loud. It follows all of your commands that you wish for it to do, and it does not take an action to command your Eidolon. But the wording here immediately says you use your action to mentally command it. Even though it says on your turn you can mentally command your Eidolon where to move, no action required. Then you can use your action to mentally command it to... This makes no sense. This doesn't make too much sense, so I just think that, we're just gonna simplify this as, like, you use, like a, I don't know, like a bonus action to command it, which doesn't count as your Eidolon's own bonus action, because it acts separately from you. Whatever. So, you can shrunk it into a pocket dimension, and you can thump it back into existence. If your Eidolon dies, you can use your action to dismiss it and put it back in the pocket dimension, and it heals back to full after a long rest. If you are knocked unconscious, your Eidolon also technically gets knocked unconscious and goes into the pocket dimension, leading, kind of ditching your teammates and your party members. So it's important for your Eidolon to take the sacrifice and keep you alive. But if your Eidolon dies, then you're going to have to try your hardest to keep your party alive or keep yourself alive. But if you die, you both die. Sadly. And if your Eidolon gets, like, wish spelled or something out of existence, then you can recreate it. And it doesn't even cost that much. It only takes a whole day. But that's if it gets completely destroyed. It's going to be really hard to completely destroy a creature. Now, basically, you have a 1d6 per level, while your Eidolon has a 1d10 to its health. Use the standard array for its stats as well. It's about the same size as you. It can be the same speed, can be faster, and it can be slower than you. If you choose biped, quadruped, or serpent. And it deals a nice unarmed strike, depending on what you'd wish for it to do. Bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. So it gives a little bit of your choice, which freedom of choice is pretty nice. If your DM is a really competitive and serious player, and you know that just joining your DM's game already screws you over, then you're going to have to commune with your party to be like, okay, so all of us are relatively slow. So, having a quadruped with a speed of 40 would be beneficial to even out our weaknesses, or to at least have somebody in the party that is accustomed to our strengths and weaknesses. It having a higher hit dice as well, and being able to choose bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing, just in case if you do not have either option to do bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. Let's say, for example, you only choose to have slashing weapons. So you can make your Elodian deal piercing or bludgeoning to sort of even it out. The problem is, you cannot hide your Elodian, which everybody that sees the Elodian knows that it is some sort of fiend or unnatural creature. So, if you're in public, you might want to hide your Elodian. Now, we kind of touched this before, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Depending on what you choose, you get different proficiencies and skills with your Elodian. And it also gets evolutions, which is its main gimmick. So this class is very customizable, and this will allow you to sort of reach all sorts of areas where you don't have to worry about missing out on something, because it will give you the option to do so. This being so freeform and being able to choose every aspect of it is its greatest strength as a very interesting homebrew class. And you can choose its type of creature, which is pretty interesting. Fey, Construct, Aberration, Fiend, Monstrosity, or Celestial. Celestial. Whatever. And also, Shink Wild Magic. That's always fun. Shink Wild Magic. That's always fun. Alright, this gains evolutions. They're contained at the very bottom of the class description. Anyway. You can also replace it and change it kind of like how clerics do when they know every spell, but they only can prepare a few. And, yeah, here's your archetype, or your subclass. There's 3, but these cover pretty much every basis pretty well. And it has a unique class features, where it grants you your class features at 7, 15, and 20, which, from my knowledge, and from the top of my head, no other class really does. Just give you 3 at these varying degrees of levels. Ability score improvements through the roof. You're basically playing the fighter with how many ability score improvements you're going to be getting from this class. As this isn't actually a spellcasting class. So, your ability score improvements are how you're going to keep alive. But you're limited, where you can only increase 2 of the ability points to either you or your Eidolonian, or whatever it's called. Eidolon, yeah. But you get so many, it really doesn't matter too much. 5th level, extra hit. Of course, non-magic fighter, you kind of do that. Basically, just rogue, where you can just whoop out of combat. Life tab. Your ability to not die faster. This one is pretty interesting. Your Eidolon's presence is terrifying to behold. You and your allies have advantage on all intimidation checks when within 30 feet of an Eidolon. Now this one kind of goes against what I said earlier, where you have free form of choice. Why are you limited to intimidation? I think that depending on what you can choose whether you want your Eidolon to be friendly looking or like confident. to bring you confidence because of how strong of a creature that you own. Or you can make it terrifying. And just limiting you to intimidation is kinda lame. But that's pretty much the only thing I really have a bad taste for. And also the wording on this is really awkward. Yeah, I gave you a little bit of time to read that. Basically, it says you no longer appear to age. However, for every year that passes, your body ages 5 years? What the hell does that mean? Timeless exterior? What the fuck? This is probably worded wrong. It probably is supposed to mean for every 5 years that passes, your body ages 1 year. Or a year. That's probably what it's supposed to say. But typos exist. And that's all the features. All the rest goes to your Eidolonian. So Shink relationships, these are your archetypes. Commander. So this is the sort of stuff that makes you strong. That it gives you combat training. It also makes you a fighter. And it makes you strong like a fighter. And it makes you versatile like a fighter. And it makes you OP like a fighter. And this one is for your Eidolonian. It basically just said, yeah, where you can just divine intervention. But with your Eidolonian, this one's pretty weird. But it also has a pretty cool ability where it makes it so your Eidolonian acts like a completely new character and acts completely separately from you. It even has its own initiative, which is it's pretty fucking sick. As before, you have to spend time to really focus on what your Eidolonian does to attack. While you just command it, and it follows those commands. Which this level 20 ability basically gives you another player. This is really good, and it's really worth getting to. But this is without playtesting, so... Researcher. Yeah, basically just makes your Eidolonian and you better equally. Yeah, and it also lets you freaking, like, Goku and Vegeta. I don't watch Dragon Ball, so I know nothing about Dragon Ball. Basically just lets you be the same creature and just destroy everyone's asses on the battlefield. I didn't even move. I have not moved in the past 30 minutes, and my headset decided, oh, I'm just shutting off. Yeah, there's got to be something wrong with my headset that I'm just not getting. It's probably the way that it's plugged into the USB, but I'll fix that later. Summoner, this is where it gets kind of. You become a half caster basically, being able to cast up to fourth level spells, but at a really high level, it being 19 and 20. Not knowing a lot of spells, but still having the ability to cast spells. So it works basically the same like everybody else, where you get spell slots per spell level. Your levels don't increase like it does with Warlock, where you just get designated spell slots for your designated levels. pretty simple stuff. It also uses your intelligence modifier, which is pretty cool. Makes intelligence more useful. And, yeah, does magic things. Mostly the functionality of this archetype comes from you being able to cast spells and making you useful again. Well, we'll get to that later. This part basically just makes you an Echo Knight fighter where you can swap places with your Eidolon, which is pretty cool. If you're about to get clobbered by a bugbear when you're fighting them at level 20, I don't know, the bugbear could be like this, could be have like the same stat pool as a Tarrasque. I don't know. Could have the same health as a Tarrasque. Like, this bugbear is super juiced on steroids. I don't know. But, yeah, basically just makes you Echo Knight the fuck out of there if you're about to get clobbered. Which I still think that the Commander is the strongest archetype from just reading, not actually playtesting, because it makes your Eidolon a separate player at level 20, and it also makes you capable of not dying faster. But it also makes your Eidolon not really too much stronger, and it only has its evolutions to make it stronger. Other than just these give you abilities to work along with your Eidolon. While this just makes you a more powerful fighter, where your Eidolon kinda just chills along with you. And eventually, at 20th level, your hit dice becomes D10s, and you're basically just as strong as your Eidolon. Well, it says that you have to command your Eidolon with actions up here. So yeah, there you go. Now here's the fun part, the evolutions. This is the whole part of the gimmick here for the Eidolon, where I mean, oh yeah, so unrelated, I just forgot to mention this. This class heavily relies on you not multiclassing, with the archetypes each having a final ability. Having 3 final abilities, except for, or, I mean, instead of every other class in the game, doesn't have, only has 1 final level 20 ability. Well, this one has 3. So it heavily relies on you getting to 20th level with just this one class, which is kind of limiting. But most of the final abilities in the archetypes will go up to 18, with the barbarian going only up to 14, which is pretty nice. And barbarian's my favorite class anyway, so anyway, now we're moving on to evolutions. The evolutions. This basically makes you a freak of nature. Have you ever... I think it was the Warlock. The Warlock... No. Bloodhunter. Bloodhunter has an archetype, or a subclass, where it's Order of the Mutant, and you can mutate your body to become a disgusting creature of nature, while you can just say no and just shit on your enemies. This lets you shit on your enemies with your Eidolon. Yeah, basically just makes your Eidolon a simic hybrid Order of the Mutant, Destroyer of Ass. Grasping limbs, ambulatory limbs, skill proficient, what? Climbing, aquatic, scent, slippery, tough skin, tool usage, armor usage, poison needles, tail spikes, kindred spear, innate magic, teleportation, amphibious bite, tail swipe, pounce, dark vision, tremor sense, webbing, stealth flight and large, reduce expertise. What the? Fast repairing and barrering. Now this is extremely loose, so you can even add your own if you feel like it, or you can flavor these to better suit your needs. Like if I want to playtest my Eidolon, for example, I want my Eidolon to be a giant spider. And let's say I'm going to subclass as Ranger Swarmkeeper, and I talk with my DM asking if I can have a bunch of jumping spiders as my horde with wings, because Swarmkeeper also requires the bugs to be flying. So let's just say that I now have flying spiders, and my Eidolon is a giant spider, which will take over the quadruped thing. But a spider isn't a quadruped, it has like 8 legs or something, so yeah, that doesn't make too much sense either. So, of course, I'm gonna want climbing. Obviously, I'm probably gonna want like poison needle as well, and like I'm gonna want webbing as well. Webbing is going to be pretty nice. And maybe like burrowing and like some of these other things. Make it so I have like a nice bite as well. Get myself some like expertise with like, and like be stealthy. Cause how many evolutions can you get? You can get up to 8 at 8th level, or like 7 or 6, which is pretty nice. You can get like a good chunk of these. So yeah, my Eidolon, or however you say it, is a giant spider that has these abilities and is my coolest spider friend. So, yeah, sorry it took me so long to explain everything, but I really wanted to share my thoughts, and those are all the thoughts I had towards this class. I cannot wait to playtest this. And yeah, and I hope that this like gets popular, or like, well, I'm too small of a creator, so my word doesn't matter in the end, to be honest. And this video is probably not going to get any views at all. But if this video gets archived and like 100 years in the future, somebody watches over this, just randomly, they're going to read this, and they might find it cool. Yeah, basically, yeah. If you made it this far, yeah. Small creators like me are depressing. We know. We know we don't matter. But putting my word out there is better than nothing. So, but I really want to see this become official content. But for right now, I'm happy with Homebrew. From what I could see, there's nothing that really stands out other than this commander class being pretty good from my understanding. I mean, I have less experience with magic casters, so I really don't understand the full power of magic, as I mostly just play barbarian, fighter, monk. So I haven't really spent too much time playing wizards or anything else, so I really don't have too much knowledge about self-experience. But I could tell from my own experience that this is really good. But hopefully, if you made it this far, you can spread your own ideas. Um, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna like scroll through here real quick. So, like, look over it again. Maybe go visit this PDF yourself. But other than that, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I might cover other homebrew, but I'm not really planning on being a Dungeons and Dragons YouTuber. But I'm kind of a channel where I just mostly just post a random collage of everything, my thoughts. So, yeah, welcome to the collage. Good day.